Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, episode 361 of Touring the AFC South, we're going to talk about a very, very big game in this division, and it stars the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I thought, let's talk a little Jacksonville Jaguars on this episode, and I thought, let's bring in the student of the game and the co-host of Duval Dive. That would be Kyle Nash. What's going on, man?
An honor, joy, and privilege to be back on here on the tour bus here for touring the AFC South. And you say it's a big game in the division. I could argue the AFC Conference is taking a look at what happens in this Monday Night Football affair. Could be the top game nationally speaking for the Jags as well. Duval's trying to go on for all y'all there. It's going to be a very interesting game, to say the least, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And like I told you before we got on air, I think this is one of the biggest games in Jacksonville history.
We'll see, man. I'll put it this way, and I didn't say this in the text because I didn't want to kill show content, but I think that depends on the game's outcome, right? That potential is there if the Jags handle business, get the proverbial vengeance finally on Patrick LaVon Mahomes II and Travis Michael Kelce. It's going to be a big deal if they win. Otherwise, it's just another Monday curse for Duval. But hey, back-to-back Monday Night Football games in itself is huge and historic, and to that, I have to give credit.
Wow, I didn't realize back-to-back Monday Night Football games for them.
Yeah, because what was it before the one last year? It was like 2 decades or something silly. This is back-to-back years they've had Monday Night Football. So it's crazy.
Oh, back-to-back years. Okay, got you. I thought you said back-to-back weeks. I was like, oh goodness.
I mean, they needed 2 long weeks after that grueling game against San Francisco, but they turned it around and played Thursday. So who were the Jags to complain? But this is the gap between Monday Night Football games being significantly less is a big deal. Now, granted, how much of that has to do with Travis Hunter might be a separate conversation, but nonetheless, it's here.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the San Francisco 49ers, kind of got to revisit that game, in my opinion. Got to talk about a 26-21 Jacksonville Jaguars victory on the road in San Francisco. I would say that definitely it surprised me. Did you give them a great chance going in to win this game against the 49ers?
And it's always odd. You and I both, as purveyors and guys who cover the AFC South, are 49er followers off the clock, right? So this was odd for me to be in a position to say if the Jags are supposed to be taken seriously, this is a game they win, right? The list of injuries the Niners had, I gave them a chance. I picked the Niners to win. I didn't suspect there would be like 8 drops and 4 turnovers when I evaluated it. Otherwise, I might have picked the game different. But yeah, this was, if the Jags were to be taken seriously, this is the first game on the schedule. At that point, you could argue wasn't an air quotes bad team. I gave them a shot. Travis picked them to win. Maybe a little homerism there as a card-carrying member of the Duval Devout there. My other half of the Duval Dive. So I got to give him his shouts. But the answer to your question is yes. I gave them a chance, and they took advantage of it, period.
They definitely did. One guy that took advantage of a few things out there on the field was linebacker Devin Lloyd. I mean, he had 2 interceptions. One of them was off the tip pass. He had a great game and was named the AFC September Player of the Week, AFC September Player of the Month, along with being the AFC Player of the Week for Week 4. I mean, with them declining his option and, a lot of talk about, him kind of being wasted talent. Did you expect this kind of play out of him so far, and especially versus the 49ers?
Man, listen, cue up Bishop Bullwinkle. That's a hell to the no. Nobody was ready for this level of play. Goodness gracious. We knew he had to turn a corner if he wanted to stay in Jacksonville, keep his prospects up for getting a second contract, all the things that players of his, shall we say, tenure have to face at this time in their career. But this is off the page. And when you look at the stuff, and I looked at some clips with Travis and the Duval Dive here, the past episode we did on I think it was Wednesday or Friday. We looked at Devin Lloyd specifically, but I can say what's different here is he's where he's supposed to be. Now, I don't know how much of this is connected to, the previous coaching regime or any others, and then earlier enough when it was still the Caldwell regime for defensive coordinator he was under, maybe he was still learning there and young and had some growing pains. I don't know all those answers or what caused the slow rise, but this year in 2025, compared to anything else we see, Devin Lloyd is where he's supposed to be when the plays are asking for him to go a little bit over and above and beyond. Straight up from week 1 playing the Panthers, he's out there on the outside making tackles on the run game there, which, the Panthers are running the ball. Not exactly a surprise. But to get in the mix with the Niners team, granted, an injured Niners team, right? But Christian McCaffrey running the football, the next level action when you're facing a run game certainly is still run CMC, and Devin Lloyd still making plays, and then having the wherewithal, speaking of being where you're supposed to be, to trail a route once McCaffrey goes behind him and the ball is in the air, and then, McCaffrey has a moment and Devin Lloyd takes advantage. Like, that's just exactly being where you're supposed to be. That is the epitome of it. That's the key to Devin Lloyd's success. He's learned a few things, and Anthony Campanelli and this coaching staff, I think, is a big part of it, not to mention upgraded defensive tackle play, right, General? Linebacker's best friend is a good interior presence. And newsflash, when you don't play former Niner Eric Armstead 61% of snaps at defensive end, like, the previous regime, he could do some things in the middle, like get the game-sealing fumble, for example.
Right. Definitely. I still was trying to figure out why they were playing him at defensive end. I mean, we saw that in San Francisco earlier in his career, and that did not work out very well. No, it just terribly. But anyway, we're flipping over to the other side of the ball, the run game. Travis Etienne. Now, there's another guy that, he's 5th-year option. He's basically going to be a free agent after this year. He is a guy that people kind of soured on, but so far he's a top 5 running back in the NFL right now when it comes to yards. So, did you kind of expect them to have to kind of dive into the running game with, the change of coaching staff and regime and Liam Cohen coming in? But I don't know if I expected Travis Etienne to be as explosive as he's been, to be as consistent as he's been over the first few games. Was this something that you kind of expected, or just kind of caught you out of nowhere, just like Devin Lloyd?
Again, expected and hoped for improvement. Actually, kind of expected improvement in the case of Etienne, right? What was it? The stat for the past 2 years, he's been, I think, at least in the top 3, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't 2 or 3 in yards at first contact, right? This means your O-line's getting blowed up and runs are getting stuffed, right? Keep in mind, we all thought Coach Doug Peterson was a good hire at the time. Granted, some of us would have preferred to see Byron Leftwich, but Trent Baalke wasn't going to let that happen. Wouldn't be the first time the coach I'd like to see coach got excised by Baalke for a team that I'm close to, but enough Jim Harbaugh references for this episode. What I'll say is this, though, Mike. James Gladstone did what Trent Baalke promised he would do. He got this team more physical in the line game, in the offensive line game. What is it? 60% of the roster or something turned over at offensive line. Absolutely insane stuff. And I don't know if it was on this show or other shows, but I've made the statement. No, you were on the Duval dive subbing in for Travis D. Holmes, I remember. And I said to you, the Jags O-line is in the most flux, but it also at the same time makes me the most confident in the O-lines amongst the AFC South. I thought I sounded smart. I look genius. By the way, they're among the top in stats at this point in the season, granted limited sample size against air quotes bad teams. The Bengals, not a super impressive defense, for example, but to see them be in the top 4 after being number 32 in yards at first contact, the difference is showing for itself. By the way, it's also great when Devin Lloyd gets a turnover and then next play is, if you remember the Duval devout anyway, next play is a 46-yard runner to the house. That's the kind of stuff that exemplifies what this Jacksonville Jaguar team has been this year.
Yeah, definitely. And then, of course, you got to talk about the toughness of this team. Usually when things go wrong or start going wrong, the Jacksonville Jaguars do not stand up to that toughness or answer the bell. this season seems like when things were kind of going wrong or, going against the grain versus the 49ers, they just stepped up and rose to the occasion and made things happen. For example, Parker Washington, the return for a touchdown at a crucial time in the game. So, can you say this is like a breath of fresh air for Jaguars fans so far this year in terms of just the situations they've overcome?
Man, how right you are with that statement. It's no accident you're driving the bus to tour the AFC South, General. Okay, I've had this conversation with Travis. I have said to him at least on 2 occasions this time last year, the Texans game and the Niner game both, this Doug Peterson group loses those football games, right? Because it was one of those situations where they started to let him back in the game, which, by the way, I don't know if it'll come up later in the episode, but that third quarter for the Jags, dang, that's a rough go. That's not been a great place for the Jags, the third quarter of these football games overall. But in the fourth quarter, as you mentioned, they hang tough. They find a way to get the pick. And hey, let's be honest, they did the same thing against the Cincinnati Bengals, where Travis Hunter would have had a pass defended that was a game winner, completely changing the narrative for the young man, and probably one of the worst defensive pass interference calls I've seen made all year. Cancels that out. Granted, you shouldn't be losing to Jake Browning. That's a separate conversation. We'll have a talk with Tyson Campbell separately. But that overall, this grit this team has is certainly something different, and you kind of felt it during training camp. Foye Sadilukan, Eric Armstead talking about the Jags being disrespected. No more. And they got some bite to them. And not just because we're supposed to keep Liam Cohen's name out our mouth. I'm just saying.
Oh no, I still find that situation funny. He kind of was walking off and then said, keep your name out of my mouth. I was like, man, come on, dog. If you really gonna do that, I think you might want to actually face the man and say that. That's what I thought was kind of funny.
I mean, it is, but let's also tell the tale of the tape here. I don't want to square up on Robert Saleh necessarily either. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Saleh had some choice words to say as well, and I was like, yeah, he was smart to not turn around.
That's a good take. I like that.
But yeah, it is what it is, and the Jacksonville Jaguars went on the road, got a big win versus the San Francisco 49ers. But up this week, they've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, a team that has been in the Super Bowl more times than the Jacksonville Jaguars can even think of at this point in their organization. It's a big game. It's a big game for them. We're going to talk about the Jags defense versus the Kansas City offense right when we come back on touring the AFC South.
EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off on these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get these EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All right, and we're back on touring the AFC South. And like I mentioned before the commercial break, big game, Jacksonville Jaguars this week, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, we're going to start with the side of the ball that a lot of people are watching when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, and the side of the ball where some people are watching when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That would be the Kansas City offense versus the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. And man, I got to say, this will be interesting for a couple reasons. One of those reasons is that Trayvon Walker, of course, he had wrist surgery. Of course, they haven't really that I don't think they've really said whether he's out or not. I think he's trying to fight through it, but honestly, it's wrist surgery, so I don't think he's necessarily going to play. That's just my personal feeling. I mean, Kyle, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume that Trayvon Walker is not playing.
Yeah, no, and they're being coy about it, and rightly so. It's obviously he's trying to, day to day is the terminology being thrown around, which, tells you about as much as an episode of the X-Files or Lost, right? So with all that in mind, like it's an element where we've assumed, I think Travis said it best when we were prepping for the Duval dive this past week. Man, who goes to a specialist and plays in the same week? That's not a thing. Well,
Right.
Now, granted, Trayvon Walker may live to prove us wrong. Who knows? We'll see. I really think it's going to be a game time decision, but it's safe to mark him as a scratch. And that alone, along with what the Chiefs are getting back on offense, listen, you heard me allude to the Niner game being the Jags getting the 49ers at the right time. I will make the antithetical argument. I don't know if that's the word it is now, but I will make the opposite argument that the Jags are facing the Chiefs at probably a little bit of the wrong time. But not to say that's an out and out situation where the Jags will lose necessarily either. But that Trayvon Walker loss is, let's go full Captain Obvious. It's pretty big.
Very much. But they do have a guy, Mr. Smoot, that can step in there and make some things happen. Now, I'm not saying that he is Trayvon Walker. No, right. He's not. But he's a rotational piece that can come in and give you some juice. So do you think if Smoot, if the things play out and Trayvon Walker doesn't play and Smoot jumps in, do you think there's a big drop off in the pass rush, or do you think Smoot rises to the occasion and gives them some juice coming from the outside to match up with Josh Hines-Allen?
Well, and it's funny, like if you were looking at this from a Madden perspective, the score of the defensive line, the drop-off would be relatively minimal. But the reason why I'm less worried about it is if there's to be a weakness on this Kansas City offense, it is those tackles. If we've learned nothing from the Super Bowl, it's that. Now, granted, the interior of the Chief offensive line, which is their strength, is Creed Humphrey and those guys. That's a tough matchup for both Mason Smith and Eric Armstead. It's a whole thing. I get it. But those edges, not exactly intimidating. And I don't know if they're going to try to put Jawan Taylor, former teammate of Josh Hines-Allen, on him on one side or try to commit him to Dawon Smoot. I have no idea what that's going to be. But I can tell you in either case, I don't necessarily dislike the matchup on the Jags side. And yeah, I know you put it out there on Twitter. We had a little conversation about it there, who you thought I would go in. We agree wholeheartedly. We believe that Smoot will be the top man to do battle in place of Trayvon Walker. But listen, Emmanuel Ogba's going to get in there some. And the kid out of Colorado, BJ Green, who was the, I guess you would call it the preseason darling there, who made his way onto the squad, may even see some snaps as well. We'll see what happens there. But I think you're right to mention that Smoot gets the lion's share. I get a little worried about sending extra pressure, though, on Patrick Lavon Mahomes II, because if there is a dude that is just as good in football terms as improving as Wayne Brady, it would, in fact, be Patrick Lavon Mahomes II. That's a little scary. But I'm wondering if the space is where we see how much Devin Lloyd gets involved with doing battle with Travis Michael Kelsey. I mentioned it in my key points in Fans First Sports Network in my article there leading up to the game, that particular matchup. I think containing Mahomes from running is a bigger concern, in my opinion, than the improv. I'm not here to say that he can't, tear you apart in his own or anything like that. But if they're trying to beat you with speed, the Jags have some fast dudes, right? This Travis Hunter kid here is pretty fast. Jarian Jones, not exactly slow. And maybe Tyson Campbell finds his footing. I don't know. But that's the particular place I'm a little worried. But with those instances, if they can play well enough, the safeties can continue to be the proper valve. If they don't need to blitz too much to get some pressure on Mahomes, that's definitely an improvement. And I think that starts with Smoot.
Okay. All right. Now you mentioned Devin Lloyd. Of course, I was going to talk about him a little bit later, but hey, let's go ahead and talk about him now. He's going against, like you mentioned, Creed Humphrey. You got and that interior. What's that?
I said I messed up the script.
Nah, you good. You're good. But Devin Lloyd is going against, the Chiefs running backs, which they haven't necessarily been anything to write home about so far. But that interior offensive line, like you mentioned, is really strong. And then, of course, you do have, like you mentioned, Travis Kelce that he has to deal with as well. So with how he's been playing so far, would this be like a person? This is a game where he can show that he can hold his own with the big boys in this one. And do you think he can hold his own in this game?
Yeah, he was deprived of the opportunity in question with George Kittle being out for the year already for the Niners. This is a good opportunity, I think. Now, granted, if it's a kind of a no-win scenario for Devin Lloyd, really is like, oh, look what happens when he plays for a good team if they win. And, well, Travis Kelce's old if he doesn't, right? So it is what it is. But at the day's end, that particular matchup, if he does his job, it's safe to assume the Jags have a high likelihood of winning the football game. So maybe that'll be in the rear view. And a good thing for the Duval divers out there. But I mean, it's clearly an opportunity for a marquee matchup there. You mentioned the run game and it being relatively weak. That's why I put so much emphasis on containing Mahomes, because he's been their leading rusher in at least one of the games. I think it's two of them, actually, if I'm thinking about it right. But and the other guy who's led the lead in rushing is Xavier Worthy, who's a receiver, right? So I think. I don't see the Jags stacking the box. By the way, that's not something they do very much anyway. So this front four has been really good. How good they could be without Walker, going back to that point, is really the driving force for all of it. I know we were talking about in the past game context, but containing the run as well is going to be a big element.
Definitely. And now you mentioned it with the wide receivers. They kind of got on track of sorts against a, as you say, Baltimore defense that is kind of being different this year. I would say not your usual selves.
Right.
So in this game they're going against the Jaguars. They have a little bit of confidence. Patrick Mahomes has confidence in them, and got to throw in there Tyquan Underwood as well. Guy ran a 4.21 in the draft combine as well. So they've got some guys. They got some track guys, but I mean, does it worry you with the confidence that they built up versus the Ravens coming into this game? You got your Tyson Campbells, you got your Jordan Lewis's, Jerry Jones, your Travis Hunters out there, and you got your safeties, your Eric Murray's as well. No Savage Life though, no Savage Life, by the way. But
hey.
But you do have your pieces out there basically to to defend these guys, but they're out there playing the game like they're playing Need for Speed out there. So, do you have kind of some trepidation if you're a Jaguar fan looking at this track team you're going to be facing?
I feel like this is the most confident the Duval have been in any of the matchups regarding the Chiefs. Simply because this is the smallest gap between the two rosters, though. You mentioned all the speed. It's not like the Jags offense is particularly slow in their own right. And with this particular go round, the pieces that they have, like I said, Travis Hunter being out there to account for speed. I know a lot of people out there calling for him more on offense. I'm a member of this group that what he plays or how much he plays on which side of the ball is dependent on the opponent, right? I had called in the preseason. You would see more snaps against the Bengals than, say, the Panthers, who are a run-style team. That's exactly what we got. The Niners game, you didn't see as much with Travis Hunter, and then Montaric Brown was in more. The Jags' best physical corner against a team that, even when healthy, is probably going to run at you more, let alone when they got guys, their top two receivers going into that day with Kittle out are forming a line, a queue, if you will, like it's a Disney ride to get into the medical tent, right? You're going to run the ball. You're not putting Hunter in there for that. This isn't a game where Hunter's skipping defensive snaps. They got speed demons that you mentioned. They're not running the damn thing. Travis Hunter is going to be a factor in general. I have to say this team in the Chiefs is this will be the third and 3 games in a row that are teams that I would call defense first, that you got to fight and be gritty against. The difference with the Chiefs is, A, it's the best quarterback that the Jags will probably see for a full stretch of time. No disrespect to Joe Burrow, but he got knocked out in the first quarter of that Cincy game, or else it'd be a different conversation, right? And it's the third straight team where the defense is a major element. I've made this comment many times, and it's no disrespect to Patrick Lavon Mahomes II. He's being asked to do a lot. The MVP of that team is still Chris Jones. I'm sure we'll get into that soon enough. But that being the third team of that ilk that's defense-oriented first for the third consecutive week, while also having speed. You could also, the Texans were that with Nico Collins out there. The Chiefs just have a little bit more of it. But you mentioned confidence from the Chiefs. I think these elements have given the Jags confidence, and nothing scarier than a younger team with confidence.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I want to ask you before we take a quick commercial break, who is your one player that you're looking at, that we haven't talked about that could have a major impact when it comes to the Jacksonville defense versus the Kansas City offense?
I mean, we haven't talked to him about him much yet, but he's definitely come up. Granted, not in Devin Lloyd fashion, but Dewey Wingard at safety. Oh, he's not going to start. By the way, you mentioned there is no Savage Life anymore, and that's because Dewey Wingard came in and took that spot. Let's call that what it is. And the way he's come in support, made all his tackles, handles all his business. By the way, got a turnover or two in there, and pretty athletic, to say the least, was his interception. I think it was against the Panthers, where he dove up and just – it's a beautiful snag. It's the kind of thing I expect Travis Hunter to do. But his element being there and to protect this team from giving up something long in the event the speed demons get speedy for the Chiefs is going to be an essential element. And he's going to be big in helping to stop that run game and keep Patrick Lavon Mahomes II contained on the ground. So make sure you account for Dewey Wingard. And I'm guilty of it myself, not giving credit to Foye Oluokun, the most underrated linebacker in the division, to say the least, if not the lead.
Yeah, he definitely is one of the best. For those that don't remember, he played for Atlanta one season. He played for Jacksonville the next. He led both conferences in tackles. Yes. So, just want to kind of give you just an idea of how everywhere this man is. But speaking of everywhere, we got to go from offense switch over to the defense. From Jaguars defense to switch over to the Jaguars offense. We're going to do that right after this commercial break on Touring the AFC South.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South. Like I mentioned before the commercial break, we got to talk about this Jags offense versus the Kansas City defense. To me, the strength of this Kansas City team, the Kansas City defense, you said earlier, Cal, no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes, but I think this Kansas City Chiefs defense has been the strength of this defense for a couple of years now.
I've said it myself.
Yeah. I hear you there. So, I do have to ask one question though, and I know you mentioned it and Tyler brought up his name, but you didn't bring up BTJ's name, but I'm gonna bring up both of them. Is this the game that they both kind of break out just a little bit more offensively? Is this because I've been, wandering and I see the plays they run with Travis Hunter, and I'm like, okay, I get it. I get you want to get to him, get it in space. but he can run more than these short routes. He can run intermediate routes. He can run deep routes too. He's just not a guy that you get the ball in his hands and tell him, hey, go do something. To me, and it just seems like to me they're limiting the use of him. And then that BTJ, I don't know what's going on there. I know he was dealing with something with his wrist, but it just seems like something is off there as well in this Liam Cohen offense. I mean, is this the game that they break out just a little bit, maybe get a little bit more understanding of the offense, or Liam Cohen gets more of a feel of how he wants to use these two?
Well, and I think you saw elements of that in the Niner game, right? The opening catch for BTJ after all of the mental, struggles that had to have been going on in his head, all the numerous drops, right? The league leading team in drops, something we previously see the Kansas City Chiefs pull off, for example, right? But that his diving catch to the outside to make his first grab of the game, I think was important. And he had a much better game from a mental standpoint. The only air quotes drop that you could give to him was one where his foot touched the toe of the line on his second catch. Still had a clean grab. Whatever's going on there with BTJ, I think is cleaned up a little bit from a mental standpoint. I really think the game plan was just to run the heck out of the ball and force the Niners to play from behind. And that's why you didn't see as much action in the air. By the way, Trevor Lawrence has only completed one pass where that traveled in the air over 20 yards. You got to remember this Liam Cohen offense is based on yak. So as that goes on, granted that first 20-yard catch, 20-plus yard catch in the air was an absolute banger from Travis Hunter, who had the catch and then had to readjust and put his arm under it. I'm calling it fast twitch intellect because I just don't know what else to call it. I know my body never did that as an offensive lineman, even in my most svelte tight end. I can't, what's with the thing in the air? No, that wasn't happening for me. So, but he's got amazing body control. And I think he's able to make those big plays in a bailout situation like that. You're absolutely right. But to not utilize Travis Hunter's evasiveness when you have BTJ, De'Ami Brown on the field, Brenton Strange pulling things out. This Etienne guy, by the way, pretty good at catching the football. And even so too was Bayshal Tootin. And then LaQuint Allen as the extra running back there, usually in there for pass pro. He's really only made one blunder of a play I can think of all season as a 7th-round draft pick rookie, can catch the football as well. So I think it's less trying to limit him per se, and more that there's so many different ways to hand the ball off. And Travis Hunter's such a great athlete. I think the way you need to utilize him from an agility standpoint. Other guys may be able to burn down the field to give you that big ball down the field. Not everybody can fast twitch, agile, and break tackles the same way that Hunter can. And I think that's why he's being utilized that way. Liam Cohen sees his new shiny toy for a guy that loves to run screens. I think it all makes sense.
Well, I hear you there. I hope the route tree expands. That's me thinking there. But we'll see what happens. But of course, let's get to the matchups that I want to see. The Jags O-line versus George Karlaftis and Chris Jones, the aforementioned Chris Jones, by the way. How do you feel about this improved Jaguars offensive line versus these two guys who are pretty much the guys up front when it comes to this Kansas City defense?
Yeah, I think this is the Jags for the first time facing a defense that's uniquely designed to be a bad matchup for them. With no disrespect to Robert Hainsey, not only is he a team captain, he's one of the main reasons his offensive line has had a good season so far. He's one of the reasons why the Jags have broken off this many runs. His ability to pull, get into the second level, and hold his own has been nice. However, I can't think of a D tackle that's been quite as intimidating as Chris Jones will be. And granted, as more AFC South football is played, where he faces against the Colts core of defensive tackles, right? And then, of course, my dude Simmons in Tennessee. Jeffrey Simmons is a beast in his own right there in the interior. Those will be different conversations when those come up. But I think Chris Jones and the Kansas City Chiefs are just a uniquely bad matchup for the Jags. Not to say that they're going to get supplanted. I mean it in the case of the middle of that line is the part where they're least good. Not that they're bad. They're just not as good as they are everywhere else. Like when you got Anton Harrison blocking 3 dudes at once on a play. So Etienne can cut back and break down a big opening. I know, as a Niner fan, I had to appreciate the line play. It is what it is, man. But when you have those elements happening, and I know Walker Little's had his struggles, but keep in mind he's also been facing off against Trey Hendrickson and some other talented dudes, right? The Texans and Will Anderson, there it is. He's had some tough matchups throughout the year there too, so that's why he might have had some struggles here and there. But overall, that Chris Jones matchup against that interior is going to be fascinating to watch. I'm hoping they put Trevor Lawrence out on some bootlegs, take Chris Jones out of some downs on occasion, give him an opportunity to either hit something down the field or use those legs. I don't care how shiny his hair is. Dude's pretty fast for a wiry guy. Just saying.
Well, I will say this, and I haven't said it in a while. Is Walker playing little? Yeah. I mean, remember we said that back in the day, said, is Walker going to play little?
You're right.
To be honest, it sounds like to me he's playing little at this point.
There's certainly been some moments.
Needed to be.
Yeah, there's certainly been some moments for him. Certainly the Kansas City game, the interception and all that went completely wrong, which, let's be honest, if you're Trevor and you don't have Trey Hendrickson always in your line of sight and awareness, that's on you for throwing that ball. But yeah, Walker got beat bad on that play. That's one such example. But I think the Karlaftis versus either of those tackles, be it Anton Harrison or Walker Little, I mentioned that just because the Chiefs tend to move their guys around. Who knows? They might have a few downs where they're facing Chris Jones, right? It's a whole thing, and they're all going to be tested. And listen, there's no shame in getting beat by Chris Jones or Karlaftis, but by the same token, you do need to do it to win the football game.
Right. You got to do your job. I'm not trying to get on that Belichick talk, but, you do got to do your job. Speaking of doing the job, I mean, ETN has definitely been doing his job. We talked about him a little earlier. This Chiefs team has been a little susceptible to the run game. Mm-hmm. So, with how ETN has run the football, could you see him cracking 100 yards again and continuing his toward pace to start the season?
Yeah, sure. And I think it's because the reason for that, and here's the thing, it may not necessarily come in the form of an actual rushing attempt, but remember, let's talk about those screenplays that Coach Cohen likes to call, right? It's very funny sometimes when we're doing the Duval Dive live for the instant reaction after a game, General, and the fans are all like, we need to run the ball more. I'm like, bruh, I know you saw the Tom Brady Patriots do bubble screens on how many plays? It's the same concept. There may be a 40-something in the pass attempts, but let's be real. At least 5 of them were screens and should fall under the rushing attempts. They don't because, it's too long of a handoff. But, yeah, I think those elements make it so Etienne could get those 100 yards. I 100% agree. And if they're successful in getting to the outside, which credit to Brenton Strange at tight end, what this guy has done game in and game out, knocking dudes out to open lanes and catching crucial passes on third down to move change has been absolutely amazing. I remember having to talk to Ben Troop, being like, so, hey, were we right that Evan Ingram wasn't that big a loss after all, that Liam Cohen had a plan? Ben Troop had to say it. And I know, listen, you cover the Titans, you do what you do. I know you know who Ben Troop is. So to have to hear him kind of roll back his worry about losing Evan Ingram with the way Brenton Strange has been playing is a statement, 100%. And listen, to see him block Fred Warner the way he did, like, again, you and I both know, the world knows Fred Warner's a beast at linebacker. This is the kind of quality you get from Brenton Strange. And I think for a successful pop-off for 100-plus yards, you're going to need him to do things in the second level or to help move the Karlaftis or whoever it is out of the way to do so.
Yeah, definitely. Lastly, a player that we did not mention that could somebody to watch in this game versus this Kansas City defense. I know you mentioned Strange. I know we mentioned Travis Hunter. We mentioned BTJ. We mentioned ETN. I'm thinking, I'm just going to throw one for me personally. I'm thinking Tootin makes a play in this game.
Sure. He's got big playability as well in every way that Travis Etienne does. They've both scored screen touchdowns in the way I'm talking about. And the reason why I don't bring up his name specifically is listen, credit to James Gladstone as the general manager. You found another dude where the gap doesn't fall off when you put him in, right? The days of knowing what the Jags are doing based on the running back that's on the field, like you saw with Doug Peterson, who's supposed to be this brainy mind on offense, right? He wrote a book, General. Yeah, well, they read your book too. They knew what was coming on every page based on your running back there, coach. That's the problem, right? Those days are gone. Even if you have LaQuint Allen, who's the pass pro guy, he's caught passes too for third down. He's also converted third and shorts. So have the other two running backs. The versatility in this running back room is why Bashaw Tutin's a fine call out just as much as any others to make a play. Absolutely.
You got one outside of that one, or are we kind of together on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned LaQuint Allen earlier. Hunter Long's been coming up big at tight end with catches at the right time too. I think he already has 2 touchdowns. I don't know who had that bet on FanDuel or wherever for the anytime touchdowns from Hunter Long, but that dude is swimming in the dough. Uncle Scrooge be like, hey, let me swim in that pool. You know what I'm saying? So that's right. That's a DuckTales reference, General. That's what we do.
Man, I started thinking of that theme song as soon as you said that. I was like, yeah,
Woo.
DuckTales. Woo, woo. Yeah, I started thinking about that. Oh my goodness. The silliness we have every time we're on the show together. But I want to I want to end the show with the prediction. I mean, I know we're not in the predicting business. We're in the analyst business. But do you have a prediction for this game? I mean, whether it be a score or just something that we will see in this game?
Yeah, I know. And I've said it with my chest already. Anybody who has 50 points or over in this matchup, just like I saw a few last week, you're not as crazy as doing it in that Niners game, but nonetheless, still pretty crazy to think that this game goes over 50 total points. I have 24-21. That's what I said on the Duval dive in favor of the Chiefs. Travis has it, I think it's 24-17 in favor of the Jags. And the reason why I bring that up is it sounds like the point differential is minimal, but I think in his scenario where the Jags overcome with a full touchdown under their belt, that's a lot more of a chaotic game. We're talking both sides have a turnover, all of that. I think the game stays pretty clean. I think there's minimal turnovers. I think Trevor doesn't Trevor very much because I think in games that are bigger hyped, he's more focused. He tends to do a little better from what I've observed. And moreover, I don't feel like Liam Combs going to put him in position to make mistakes. So I think both sides play clean, but the penalties for the Jags, there's just entirely too many, right? I think they might have one game where they didn't go into double digits. You can't do that. You cannot shoot yourself in the foot against Patrick Mahomes II because he will, in fact, make you pay. However, Jawan Taylor happens to do that for his squad. That's the best case scenario for Duval.
Yeah, you got it. Now, one thing I will mention as well is I don't know if you all caught that while listening to the show, but he just said, "With Trevor go Trevor," and it's kind of interesting. I'm not the one saying it on the show. Usually, I would probably be the one saying Trevor go Trevor on the show. Just wanted to kind of point that out in this episode of this.
Hey, listen, this is me getting the opportunity to prove that I'm not a Trevor apologist. I just don't think he's as bad as everybody wants to tell you. But that being said, I'm also not mesmerized by the golden locks like some members of the Duval devout. And I get it, but I like what you said, that there's an opportunity, especially if you get that big play from Bashaw Tutin and get that 100-yard game from either one of the running backs. If that happens, don't be surprised if you get that breaking throw that turns the season for Trevor Lawrence in the pass game.
Now, I will say this. When I see Trevor Lawrence and I see how he's kind of been up and down during his career, and I know you might not know this song, Kyle, but I think of a song called Emotional Roller Coaster. And, it's by Vivian Green. Every time I see him play, it just goes, I start singing Emotional Roller Coaster. I can't sing, y'all, but, I tried a little bit. But it's going to be interesting just to see if he's going to get back on that roller coaster again this year or not. because, if he gets back on the roller coaster, and this could be a part of it, or it couldn't be, then you have to start calling a spade at this point. He's a guy that's going to have ups and downs pretty much throughout his career, and it is what it is, instead of thinking, hey, he's going to play solidly across the way. That's the kind of my thinking when it came to Trevor Lawrence.
I think you're uniquely qualified somehow, though, to get where I'm at with Trevor Lawrence, and it's with this, because you, as a fellow 49er faithful, that's what I meant to say, a fellow 49er faithful, know the story of Alex Smith. What was it? He had 6 different offensive coordinators. Well, Trevor's working on 4 in 5 years. Okay, that's a factor here. This might be the most comfortable he's been in his entire career. Now, he has had a slow start. Some of that is the complication of the Liam Cohen offense. Some of it is its concentration on the run game. We mentioned the complicated element of it. This is why they have so many penalties. The Bucs had this many penalties early in the season last year themselves, right? There's a trend there. With given time, when given time, which he started to get, which you've seen him look a little better on some of these shorter throws, right? And getting over the trauma of having to make something happen, whether he was mired in Urban's bad coaching or dealing with a Super Bowl winning coach that forgot he did not have 3 Hall of Famers on his offensive line during his tenure in Doug Peterson. Learning that you don't have to do everything is still the state of mind that Trevor's in. Is it surprising he's slow to develop here early in the year? Not really. I was more surprised by the slump. While Trevor isn't perfect, let's also remind the world at large, they lead the league in drops, right? And that's kind of the part that really makes it hard to analyze this year. Everything you say has its merits. I agree. Trevor makes some very questionable, impulsive, I want a hero ball save the day throws. Should be criticized for that. But the other element, I think there's an opportunity that he's a late bloomer, just like Alex Smith was as a former Niner and landing the plane, former Chief.
There we have it. We've reached the end of the show. I want to thank Kyle Nash for coming on the show, the student of the game, of course, and the co-host of the Duval Dive with Travis D. Holmes, who is Kyle Nash's personal champion, as he always says.
That's right.
But just want to of course, thank you for coming on the show, Kyle. If you can, tell everyone where they can find you on social media and any other things that you would like to tell the people.
General, always a joy to tour the AFC South with you. This is a celebrity tour bus here. I feel like I have plenty of room to stretch out and be silly. It's great. Of course, thanks again for having me. I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as a student of the game. Check out my writings for the Jacksonville Jaguars on the Fans First Sports Network, as well as my work covering the Orlando Magic. General, we're at that time of year. They're in camp right now. I got to catch up with Coach Jamal Mosley and Paolo Banchero, as well as some of the other Magic players. Make sure you check that stuff out on Fans First Sports Network. Also, as we're recording this tomorrow night, UCF hosts the Kansas Jayhawks at the Bounce House for some football there. I'll be there with the Black and Gold Banneret and the Night Shift podcast. Also, the Duval Dive this weekend, the Duval Dive live, the instant reaction after the Jags game. And I'm also the producer for the Bolt Blitz Uncut. I said Sunday. I meant Monday. It's the Chiefs game. Duh. But the Chiefs, after that game Sunday, you'll have Booga Peters, Buck D, and the gang there reacting to the Chiefs matchup against the Red Tails. Sorry, I was about to get their name wrong. The Commanders, whatever you all for you non-believers. So yeah, with all that in mind, make sure you check that as well. Bolt Blitz Uncut. But now that I've been through my long list of things that I do, I'm only slightly close, just a little close to as busy as the General Mike Patton. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed.
Oh boy, there you go. But yeah, of course, thank you for coming on the show, Kyle. Of course, I'm the host of the show. My name is Mike Patton. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton82. That's MikePatton. Of course, you can find me on Blue Sky, same thing, Mike Patton82. Instagram and Threads, you can find me, that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. You can find Touring the AFC South on all listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. And we are also on the Mike Pat Network on YouTube, where I have counted three shows and podcasts on there that you can keep up with. I definitely got them split up in playlists for you. And I just want to thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South. We're out. Peace.